Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion by Robert B. Cialdini is a masterclass in how human behavior is shaped by invisible forces that operate below the level of conscious awareness. Told with the storytelling skill of a seasoned psychologist and the precision of a scientist, the book unpacks 6 core principles of influence that marketers, salespeople, politicians, and everyday individuals use to steer our decisions. But Cialdini doesn't simply catalog these tactics. He immerses the reader in real-life scenarios and psychological experiments that reveal just how vulnerable we all are to manipulation, often without realizing it. The book begins with Cialdini's confession of a personal mission, to understand why people say yes. His curiosity takes him undercover into various roles: used car dealerships, telemarketing companies, fundraising organizations, where he witnesses persuasion in action. What makes this journey gripping is how ordinary each encounter seems, until Cialdini deconstructs the psychology behind it. He's not writing from the ivory tower, he's right there, watching how human reflexes are exploited, often with alarming ease. One of the first principles Cialdini introduces is reciprocity, the idea that people feel obligated to return a favor. Even small gestures, a free sample, a kind word, can trigger a powerful urge to comply with a later request. He illustrates this with vivid examples: a waiter offering mints gets bigger tips, a Hare Krishna member handing out flowers increases donations. The rule is simple: we hate feeling indebted. The genius of the principle lies in how easily it can be weaponized. Next comes commitment and consistency, a principle that capitalizes on our desire to appear stable and rational. Once we commit to something publicly or in writing, no matter how small, we're far more likely to follow through with behavior that aligns with that commitment. Cialdini recounts studies where people were more likely to keep appointments, vote, or even put up large yard signs simply because they had previously agreed to a much smaller request. The mechanism is subtle, but the results are significant. We shape our future actions to match our past words. Social proof is the third principle, and it taps into our deep need to belong. We look to others, especially in ambiguous situations, to determine how to behave. Whether it's canned laughter in sitcoms, long lines at restaurants, or online product reviews, we take our cues from what the majority appears to be doing. Cialdini highlights how this instinct can lead to disastrous consequences, like the infamous case of public suicides leading to copycat events, but also how it can be ethically harnessed in marketing and public service campaigns. Cialdini then turns to liking, the tendency to say yes to people we like. The book explores how attractiveness, similarity, compliments, and familiarity all factor into this equation. A salesperson doesn't need to be your friend, they just need to act like one. Cialdini shares how even subtle things like mirroring someone's body language or finding common ground, "You're from Chicago? Me too," dramatically increase compliance. What makes this principle particularly insidious is that it feels so personal, when in reality, it's often strategically deployed. Authority is the fifth weapon of influence, and Cialdini draws on chilling historical examples like the Milgram experiments to show how deeply ingrained our respect for authority figures is. When someone wears a lab coat, speaks with confidence, or flashes a badge, we're more likely to defer, even when doing so contradicts our own judgment or morals. The influence of perceived expertise shows up everywhere, from fake doctors in commercials to titles and uniforms that confer unearned credibility. Finally, scarcity operates on the principle that we want what we think we can't have. Limited time offers, exclusive deals, countdown timers, they all tap into our fear of missing out. Cialdini explores how scarcity enhances not just perceived value but also emotional urgency. When something is rare or restricted, we don't just desire it more, we feel compelled to act fast. He shows how marketers exploit this sense of urgency, often inducing people to make rushed decisions that they later regret. What makes Cialdini's book so engaging is not just the clarity with which he explains these 6 principles, but how he reveals their interplay. Often, multiple principles are used together to produce an even stronger effect. A limited-time deal, scarcity, offered by a charming salesperson, liking, with a clipboard and credentials, authority. Who just gave you a free sample, Reciprocity, creates a web of unconscious triggers that are hard to resist. Cialdini decodes these manipulations with clinical precision but also genuine concern. Yet this isn't a book about becoming manipulative, it's also a guide for defense. Cialdini arms readers with awareness. He believes that understanding these principles is the first step in resisting them. His tone is never alarmist, but always cautionary. He wants people to recognize when they're being nudged, pushed, or coerced into decisions that may not align with their actual interests or values. There's also a strong ethical undercurrent throughout the book. Cialdini doesn't demonize influence, he acknowledges that it's a part of everyday life. Persuasion isn't inherently bad, it's how it's used that matters. The book invites readers to wield these principles responsibly, whether they're persuading a team, selling a product, or trying to communicate more effectively in personal relationships. Influence, after all, is a tool, and like any tool, it can either build or destroy. Toward the end, Cialdini reflects on his own susceptibility. Despite his expertise, he admits to falling for the very tactics he studies. This vulnerability humanizes him and strengthens the book's message: none of us are immune. Influence is not about intelligence or strength of will. It's about how our brains are wired. By acknowledging this, Cialdini turns what could have been a cold academic thesis into something deeply relatable. Influence remains a foundational text because it bridges science and storytelling. Each chapter reads like a well-crafted case study, part psychological experiment, part detective tale. The people in his stories are not caricatures, they're us. We see ourselves in the shoppers lured by last chance signs, the employees swayed by authoritative memos, the citizens who donate just because everyone else seems to be donating too. Cialdini's writing doesn't just inform, it activates. It changes how you look at ads, conversations, meetings, even friendships. You begin to notice the cues, the scripts, the subtle nudges in everyday life. And more importantly, you begin to pause before reacting. That moment of pause is what the book ultimately offers, a crack in the automaticity of influence where true choice becomes possible. In closing, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion is not only a guide to understanding why people say yes, it's a roadmap to greater personal agency. Cialdini teaches us that awareness is power. The more we understand about the hidden architecture of persuasion, the more we can choose deliberately rather than react automatically. It's a book that empowers without preaching, equips without overwhelming, and leaves readers with a sharper lens on the world and their place within it.